Can you see it's recording?
I can now.
Okay.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to All Sports BPT. I'm Ben Kaysen. Joined with me at the bottom of the screen is Tully Beatson, and to the left is Phil Cervello.
Happy to be here.
Yeah,
Great
times.
to have you guys. So this show and podcast is going to be covering a lot of different sports from not only around the U.S. but from around the world. We're covering football, American and European.
Just European.
We'll be covering NBA basketball. We'll be covering MLB, college football, and other more smaller sports from around the world, except for hockey. So Canada, I'm sorry, but we're not covering any of it. Get off the podcast now if you're listening.
I'm not even sorry.
Yeah, I'm not sorry about that.
Yeah,
they might be sorry, but we're not. So we're going to be covering a lot of different sports today. Mainly, we're going to be covering the NFL, MLB, college football, and the NBA, along with some.
We got a big interview as well. Who we got coming on?
Oh, we got a former professional basketball player, Matt Schubert, joining us today. Now current strength conditioning coach at Barton College.
So I think that's a big start for the podcast.
Oh yeah, starting off with the former pros, we gotta start somewhere. So we got a great show ahead of us. Phil, thanks for being with us. He'll join us here in a little bit whenever we start getting into soccer.
Thanks, Phil.
I miss you guys.
Miss you.
We'll miss you too.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, Ben.
So let's get right into it. We're gonna be covering a lot of interesting stories today about the NFL.
Yeah, it's gonna be a big day. I mean, if you're listening in, thank you for listening. If you have a beer, coffee, vodka, cheers. Let's get this going.
All right. So getting into one of the biggest stories so far this season, and one that I don't think that a lot of national media was really looking forward to, is the Pittsburgh Steelers are 9-0.
Yeah, the massive news from Pittsburgh.
Last season, Big Ben injured his elbow going into week number 3, and the Steelers were somehow able to pull out an 8-8 record. This year, they've already surpassed their wins from last year.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's impressive. I think Big Ben's injury kind of made them fly under the radar. And the team were coasting, and now he's back. You can see. I mean, the leadership is there. I mean, everything's clicking. To be 9-0, that's a massive feat.
Yeah, and in current NFL power rankings, they are ranked number 1.
Yeah, unsurprisingly too. I mean, they're really dominating their matchups too.
Yeah, I think it was a really impressive showing against the Cincinnati Bengals, putting them down as easily as they did, because Cincinnati just a couple of weeks ago beat the Tennessee Titans, who up until a couple of weeks ago, they were also undefeated.
Yeah. That was a big matchup, and they have a few tough games coming up. Was it next week? They have the Jaguars, which would be an interesting matchup to see how that works out. But I think the Steelers are going to take that one.
I think so as well. It's going to be definitely a tough one to battle through. I don't think Gardner Minshew is going to be available for that game, but
which could be a big blow. But
Jacksonville seems to always be causing trouble for everyone. I mean, Green Bay only beat them by 4.
Yeah.
Sunday. So, we're talking about, even though these are going to be top 10 pick teams in the upcoming draft. I don't think that they're as bad as they seem.
Yeah,
and,
no.
I mean, they're playing like they have nothing to lose. So when they come into these games, if they beat the Steelers, then it's a big upset and the Steelers get taken down a notch. But if they lose, everyone was expecting it.
Yeah. I think a massive part of the Steelers beating the Jaguars would be stopping James Robinson. I mean, he's had some good games in the past few weeks, and I think he's due a big game in the next couple of weeks. So
Yeah, so I think he's number 5 in the league right now in rushing.
yeah,
And the only thing I'll say is that the Steelers have been known for stopping the rushing attack. And their front seven, they held Derrick Henry to 60, 70 yards in their matchup.
that's
So
massive. I mean, I'd argue he's the best running back in the league as well.
I think it's between him and Dalvin Cook.
Mhm.
Dalvin Cook's been putting up some massive numbers recently, but
Yeah,
I think that if the Steelers are able to get Robinson under control and get a good lead at the start, it's really going to take away from the Jaguars' rushing attack and force
yeah,
them to go to the air.
yeah. And I think if they can put some good coverage on Chark Jr., that's going to be huge, huge.
Yeah,
I mean, if they can stop him from pushing the ball down the field, getting some clutch receptions, I think that'll be huge for the Steelers.
yeah, and I really want to see in this next game and going forward, James Conner start to take more of a bigger approach into the offense going forward.
Hmm.
The Steelers' rushing attack has been almost non-existent in the past couple weeks, and
Yeah,
that's
which is quite
something.
scary.
It is scary because we're relying on Big Ben with he's in his late 30s now with a repaired elbow. As
Mm.
much as I love seeing him going back there and just slinging the ball, uh, I don't want him just to have to do it by himself.
Yeah, and especially this time of year, it's getting colder, it's getting wetter. I mean, it's going to be a lot harder to throw the ball. We saw in the Ravens game, the weather was a huge factor in the Patriots taking that victory.
Yeah,
So I think if you can start to begin your rushing game or your now, the sooner the better, really, because you don't want to get to the playoffs and then have to try and force something because you can't throw every down because Ben's got a tweak in his elbow or a few niggles or something like that, or the weather's not in your favor. So I think that'll be great for the team to kind of push that forward in the team meetings coming up to the Jaguars. And I think Jaguars are a good team to attempt that on, actually, with their
yeah.
defenders.
I think that the Steelers' offensive coordinator really needs to mix up the playbook at this point, trying to get some more diverse play calling within the offense, trying to mix it, because I feel like the Steelers, if they're able to get the passing game going early, they can start to rely more heavily on the run throughout the game.
Yeah,
So I think,
massively.
you get Big Ben firing on all cylinders at the beginning, instead of what he's been doing in the past couple of games, which has been trying to go from behind. The Dallas Cowboys game is in particular. I think the Steelers really wanted to get the running game going at the beginning, but
Yeah,
then they fell apart, and the Cowboys were pushing the Steelers to the brink, and it came
yeah.
down to Big Ben's heroics that actually got them the game.
Yeah, and I think if they move to more of a rushing play, and they get their running backs involved and start trying to push the ball up the field, this it's going to relieve some pressure from Ben, just from a physical standpoint. I mean, because we're halfway through the season now, and if he keeps slinging the ball the way he is, the question starts to come up: when do you think he'll start to feel that stress on his arm?
Yeah, and actually, I think this past week of him being on the COVID reserve list did him some wonders, because he didn't have the physical toll throughout the week of
Yeah.
practice and conditioning and all these other things.
Hmm. Yeah, which is a crazy thing to say when someone's on the COVID list. But the COVID-19 is a crazy virus. Some people get affected dramatically, and some people, obviously, like Big Ben, it barely affects them at all.
Yeah, now luckily he didn't actually get COVID. He
Yeah.
was just within that contact tracing and
Hmm.
was good to play. But, I think you see it immensely with Cam Newton. His play has dropped significantly since he got COVID.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's a big one. I think that's a good transition into that Cardinals Ravens game because the Ravens look like they're falling to pieces.
Yeah, the Ravens Patriots game.
Yeah, Ravens Patriots. Yeah.
Yeah, they were. I mean, the Ravens' whole offense is based on rushing, and the Patriots turned that on them, and they just said, "We're gonna rush everything down your throat."
Yeah, no, yeah, it's interesting to see. It looks like, I mean, obviously it's his only second year in the league for Lamar Jackson, but do you think the teams are starting to work him out? Year three, sorry. And do you think that a lot of teams look like they're working out their playbook? It looks like they're forcing them to make plays that they're not comfortable making.
Yeah, well, that's the thing that, I think last year they didn't know exactly what they were going to get out of Lamar, and there's been the distinction between the quarterbacks over the past couple years. I just saw a statistic on Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, and Cam Newton, all of who have a similar style of play. And, Cam Newton and Lamar Jackson were only throwing for 220 yards a game, which isn't a lot when you think about a professional quarterback nowadays. So I think that unless Lamar Jackson really sits down, I think in this offseason, it becomes much more of a presence to much more of a presence in the pocket, throwing the ball and being able to affect them that way, and then using his escapability to affect them after that. I think that's going to make him go back to that MVP kind of level instead of where right now they're really depending on him to do everything on the offense. And I think if he's able to become more of a pocket presence and they go out and get a number one wide receiver, I think you see the Ravens go back into that Super Bowl level.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think getting at least another wide receiver who can get you the first downs, I think is going to be massive because I think, Snead's been playing well, but if you're trying to push for a Super Bowl, you're going to need some better pieces across the board to support a QB like Lamar Jackson, because we all know he can run. Him and Kyler Murray, the best running QBs in the league. Their scrambling ability is incredible. The only question is, with Lamar, and it has been the question for the past 3 years, can he consistently throw?
Yeah. And we know he can sling the ball, but it's the accuracy and the kind of middle yard throws that he has to make that doesn't seem to be as accurate as normal.
Yeah. Or what you'd expect at that level. But I think as well, we have to give him the benefit of the doubt that he hasn't really been. I mean, this is my opinion. You tell me how you feel about that. But I don't think they've kind of run that playbook where they have these inside slants and they're looking for like 10-yard throws just to try and move the chains a bit. I think they're not really pushing that kind of plays often.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of read option passes that they're doing right now, and the opposing teams know what's coming at them, so they're stacking the box, and they say, all right, let's have this linebacker make sure you stay on Lamar, and everybody swarm the running back, and then if he goes on for the option, we got that linebacker on him.
Yeah. I think once he can find that elusive nature where defenses, they don't know if he's going to throw or run, and it's a lot less predictable, then I think he's going to be back up the MVP level.
Yeah, and that's the same thing that was a problem with Cam Newton whenever he was like around his peak of play. You know, he was only completing like 56% of his passes in his MVP year.
Yeah.
So if if Lamar Jackson really wants his career to continue to trend upward, which I think right now we're seeing it plateauing.
Yeah.
And that might be as much of the team dynamic as it is his actual skills. But if he wants to keep trending upward and have the Ravens continue to trend upward, you know, they're gonna need him to become much more of a throwing threat.
Yeah, I agree. And the good thing I hear from the Ravens, and you hear from Lamar Jackson himself in interviews and when he's speaking to the media, he's admitting that he wants to be a QB that throws. He doesn't want to just be a QB that gets the ball and runs it the majority of the time. He doesn't want to be that Cam Newton in his MVP season where he's only known as someone who can run the ball. And that's exciting news, especially for the Ravens, because you don't want him taking those hits. I mean, he obviously he can take them now. Now he's a 23-year-old, still fit, but you can't sustain that. I mean, look at Cam Newton. I mean, he's pushing on now, but and I genuinely think that those hits and everything that that physical struggle that he went through in the middle of his career have really taken its toll on his ability to play and throw the ball. Honestly.
Yeah. So I mean, let's transition a little bit here into like the MVP race that we have going on right now, because I think it's quite interesting dilemma that we have here, that I think the media is trying not to crown Patrick Mahomes the de facto MVP yet. You know, they're trying to give everyone else a chance, which I've never understood. You know, whoever's the best right now is the best.
Yeah.
And you know, even though I think it's a two-headed race between Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers, I don't think that when it comes down to it, it's close. I think Patrick Mahomes is going to be the MVP again.
Yeah, and I mean, if you asked me that question, who do you think is the MVP race 2 weeks ago? I think there'd be three names in there. I think Russell Wilson, Pat Mahomes, and Aaron Rodgers would have been all three right in the race for it. But it seems like with the Seahawks struggling defensively, they're just struggling to throw. They're just it looks like something's not working over there. I think he's starting to fall out of the race. I think the Seahawks they're forcing him to throw long, and it's affecting him. His percentages, and it's just not great to see the Seahawks kind of decline so rapidly.
Well, you know, and this is something that we haven't seen from Russell Wilson before is how many interceptions and turnovers that he's having within a game. You know, when we're talking about this two-headed race, Aaron Rodgers has 3 interceptions this season.
Yes.
Patrick Mahomes has 1.
Yeah.
I mean, and Russell Wilson, I think, has had 9 turnovers in the past 3 games.
Yeah, 3 games. I mean, that's a massive difference.
You know, he threw 3 interceptions in 1 game.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I mean, you know, it's hard to continue to count him in there whenever he's having this many turnovers. I think the one person we have to start thinking about in this race, though, is Big Ben.
Yeah. I mean, if the Steelers keep marching on the way they are, I mean, you can't keep him out of that conversation for much longer. I mean, if they push 9-0, 10-0, 11-0, if they just keep winning, when do you think the mass media or people are going to start taking notice?
You know, I don't know. I think it's going to take like a 15-1, a 16-0 season for them to crown him the MVP. I know. I think he's definitely in the running for the comeback player of the year. But when it comes to the MVP, Big Ben hasn't gotten a vote in his entire career, which is crazy to say because he's been in the league so long. You'd think he would have gotten it at some point. But, you know, I think this is like one of the first times that he's a smart enough quarterback now, and he has the defense to go alongside of it. I think some of those years he was posting his career years, I think that's whenever he had a really weak defense and wasn't able to put up the years and the success of the team as usual.
Yeah. No, I agree. But it'll be interesting. And another question is, will Russell Wilson, do you think he can bring the Seahawks back into that incredible form that they began the season in? Or do you think it's over?
I think it's over. They're going to have a good season, but they're not going to be able to push it like they were. Teams are figuring them out. But,
yeah. Because that's the thing with the MVP race. I mean, it's all about consistent greatness throughout the year. And you're seeing that with Pat Mahomes. I mean, granted, Pat Mahomes has a lot more options. I mean, you throw the ball anywhere close to Tyreek Hill, and he's going to catch it and he's going to go for a touchdown. I mean, his speed and his ability is incredible. And the same with Aaron Rodgers. I mean, he can sling the ball all over the place. He has great options for him. And I think it looks like the Seahawks are quite dependent on a few key players. And you see it. Teams are figuring them out and getting interceptions. I mean, that's the biggest part. I mean, if you're missing downs, that's one thing. But if cornerbacks are figuring you out and picking the ball, I mean, they're all over them at the moment.
Yeah. And we're going to have to cut this short now. We've got our guest joining us, Brennan Hurd, to talk to us about MLB and in a little bit about college football. So we'd like to welcome Brennan Hurd. How are you doing, buddy?
Not too bad. How you doing? Got to get the camera loaded on here. Still don't know a darn thing about Zoom, so
we're all good, buddy.
Well, welcome, Hurd.
Yeah. Good to have you, buddy. So we're gonna start moving our way into the MLB. We're gonna give our updates here. I'm gonna log off for just a second, and I'll be back in about 10-15 minutes to continue our conversation about college football. So you guys continue to have your talk here.
Excellent. Well, Hurd, how are you doing first and foremost?
Oh, great, Tolly. How about you?
Yeah, doing very well. I mean, there's been some interesting news in the MLB. I think the first thing we start with is Kim Ng.
Yeah.
Massive news.
For sure. Pretty groundbreaking. It's 2020 and that glass ceiling in terms of the front office has finally been broken. Not only becoming the first female general manager in Major League Baseball by joining the Marlins, but also the first female general manager in the Big Four.
That's huge, isn't it? I mean, it's about time. It's fantastic news. And my favorite part about this is, I mean, it's not like a political move where they've chosen someone based on gender just to try and break that glass ceiling. She truly deserves it. I mean, she's had an incredible career.
Yeah, absolutely. Very well qualified. She was the assistant GM of the Yankees in the late 90s, won 3 World Series with them. From 2011 until she took this position, she was senior director of baseball operations for the entire MLB. So really qualified, really good, someone who put in the time, and I think she's going to do well. The Marlins had a year that a lot of people didn't expect them to have last year.
Yeah, not at all. Not at all. I did not expect it. Not at all.
Absolutely.
I think she's going to bring some great things. I mean, as you said, her resume is stacked full of championships. She's been on lots of championship teams. She's seen the building of lots of championship teams. And I think that'll play a massive factor. And if you're a Marlins fan at the moment, you're going to be very excited about this transition.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you're already coming off a season where you weren't expected to do much to begin with. A lot of people were calling for Derek Jeter's head after 1 year, and then, granted, it was a shortened season, but still, they played very well, made the playoffs, won their first playoff series, and their payroll stayed pretty low. They got rid of a lot of assets in the offseason last year, turned things around, and had a lot of success. So hopefully, they can keep on building. I hope they don't beat the Pirates, but then again, everyone beats the Pirates. So what can you do?
That's a sour subject for you, isn't it? So we'll
Sure.
stay away from the Pirates.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely, sure. Because because Kim Ing, just talking about some of the positions she's gone for in the past years, she's interviewed for GMs for multiple of the big teams in MLB. She interviewed for the GM position in the Dodgers in 2005. She's interviewed for the Seattle Mariners GM position, San Diego Padres, and San Francisco Giants. I mean, she's been knocking on the door for years now, and it's just exciting news.
For sure.
So it's fantastic. So I wanted to talk to you about the CY Young winners, Shane Bieber, Trevor Bauer.
Yeah.
They had a hell of a season, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. In America, it's Cy. I don't know.
Yeah.
Cy Young.
So yeah, he's a good lad.
I don't know what they call it in Rounders, but
Yeah, we call it. I just call it CY because I didn't want to pronounce it incorrectly, especially being with an MLB fan, an American who's born and bred into the sport. Last thing I want to do is start throwing incorrect pronunciations around.
Yeah, I'm just playing with you, buddy. But yeah. Trevor Bauer and Shane Bieber. Speaking of my misfortune to Pirates, Shane Bieber started his season, I think, in the second week by no-hitting the Pirates. Was completely dominant. Had something crazy. I don't have the exact statistic, but I'm pretty sure through 3 starts, he had something like 40 strikeouts, which is kind of unheard of. So it was a big year, not very expected for Shane Bieber. He wasn't really a high name. Is it somebody that you'd expect to have the kind of season that he had? So he kind of came out of nowhere to do that, which, I mean, good for him. He's probably going to get a big contract. I think he might have already signed one. As for Trevor Bauer, speaking of finding a big contract, you could kind of see it come from Bauer. He's kind of weird when it comes to baseball with as much as he works on things like spin rates, invents his own pitches. He finally had that breakthrough year for the Reds, and now he's a free agent, so he's going to get paid somewhere.
And I think he's going to get paid some big money. I mean, he's a massive free agent. It was just I wonder where he's going to end up. Do you have any ideas? Who has the cap space for him?
Well, cap space isn't really a thing in Major League Baseball.
Oh, yeah, they changed it.
Baseball uses a luxury tax. So that's one thing that kind of separates them from football and basketball, and that rich teams like the Yankees and Dodgers can get essentially whoever they want. There's a certain luxury tax number, but if you go over it, all you have to do is pay a fine. When you have money like the Yankees and Dodgers do, you don't really have to worry.
It's nice and easy.
I don't foresee him going to the Yankees, though. Reason being, he was a college teammate of Garrett Cole's. They did not get along.
Oh, really? Wow. That's a good insight.
He and Garrett Cole are pretty open about the fact that they don't like each other, so I do not see him going to the Yankees. My best bet at this point, because Bauer is a California guy, I think the Padres would be a pretty good landing spot for him. Padres are a young team, getting better, made the playoffs, and they have studs with I don't know if Machado will be back or not, but with guys like Tatis, young pitching core. If I were a betting man, I would say the Padres are the place where Trevor Bauer is going to end up.
That would be a good fit for him. I think, that's a good call. I think he can lead that young team. Maybe not to a World Series. That might be a bit presumptuous, but I think that he could definitely do some damage over there. That's for sure. Did you hear about the massive news at the Cubs today?
I did.
Theo Epstein stepping down.
Theo Epstein, I mean, I never realized. It seems like Theo Epstein's been around forever. I mean, he got the Red Sox to break their streak in 2004. I think he won a couple of World Series with the Red Sox. Got the Cubs to end their long World Series drought.
108 years drought. I mean, he really tore that team apart and built it from the ground up. He did a fantastic job there.
Yeah, he certainly did. But the one thing I didn't realize about Theo Epstein, since he's been around for so long, he is in his mid-40s. So who knows where he's going to go from here, whether he leaves baseball as a whole or tries to work for Major League Baseball. I think the possibilities are endless. He's proven, and he ended the 2 longest World Series droughts in baseball.
Impressive.
The first one when he was in his 20s. So, yeah, sky's the limit for Theo Epstein. I am a notorious Cubs hater, so
Yeah,
I
of course
do
you
like
are.
to see the news, but
Yeah.
I'm like I said, sky's the limit for him.
Yeah, no, I agree. I've heard some speculation, really. I mean, he says he's been saying to the media that he wants to at least take a year off, and he's going to enjoy waking up and not having to go to work in the summer. But what do you think about it? There's been some talk about him going to the Mets and trying to redo that franchise. How do you feel about
That would make sense. The Mets are in the process of being sold right now. Their GM, Brody Van Wagenen, was just let go, I think, either last week or the week before.
that? Yeah,
The advantage to going to the Mets is obviously it's a big market, but
yeah.
Chicago is also a big market. So he already
Mhm.
kind of had a big market team. The Mets are the little brothers in New York behind the Yankees, whereas the
Yeah.
Cubs were always kind of stepped over the White Sox. So I'm not sure if the Mets make sense, especially if he
Yeah.
says he wants to take a year off.
Hmm.
I'm not. I don't really like the direction the Mets are going. So
Yeah.
I guess we'll have to see. I would be surprised to see Theo Epstein join the Mets.
Yeah, the only reason why I say that I could see it happening is because it seems like he enjoys that entire rebuild process. I mean, he
Yeah.
seems like he really enjoys it. So I think change of ownership, he could be a fresher breath air. I think if you're a Mets fan, you'll be praying to whoever you pray to have him come over there and redo that franchise. But we'll see.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Tolly. Yeah, maybe it's just something personal for him where he has that chip on his shoulder. He's just a rebuilder. And
Yeah.
I mean, if you can rebuild the Red Sox, the Cubs, and the Mets, I mean, he's probably a Baseball Hall of Famer as it is already just because of his work. But I don't
Yeah,
know.
I
He
agree.
still feels like there's something to prove. Mets would be a good opportunity for Theo Epstein.
Yeah. It seems like he really he enjoys it. I mean, imagine if he can turn that team around. I mean, he'd be a Hall of Famer without question.
Oh,
I mean, I think he's already solidified his place. But yeah, imagine if he does that. What do you think about Jed Hoyer taking over from Theo Epstein?
I was not aware that they had named his successor. To be completely honest, don't know who Jed Hoyer is, but
Okay, yep.
I mean, they're the Cubs. They're going to be fine, I think, either way. They still have their talent around for a little bit longer, though.
Yeah.
Sure, a few of them are going to be free agents at some point in the
Yeah.
near future. That young core that they built with Bryant and Rizzo and Schwarber. Um,
Hmm.
so, like I said, I don't really know about Jed Hoyer, but
Yeah.
and
We've
the
been
Cubs will
studying
be
under
in.
Theo for a while, so
Yeah.
yeah, it should be good. I mean, I'd love to touch on the free agency happening this year and especially next year, but I think we'll save that for next week when we
Okay.
see Ben's back on. So I think that's a perfect transition into the college football scene.
All righty. Good talking baseball with you, brother.
Yeah, I loved it. That was good. I hope everyone enjoyed themselves. Good insight from Brennan Hurd there.
It's
All right.
baseball. They probably didn't enjoy themselves. Let's be honest.
No, yeah,
All
definitely not
right,
if they're
buddy.
Pirates fans.
Yeah. The
And,
Pirates fans haven't enjoyed themselves in quite some years.
Yeah, no. All right, then, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to sign off for 15 minutes. I'll see you back.
See you, buddy.
See ya.
All right, Brennan. So let's give a quick update on what's going on in the college football world, because currently I think you're seeing a lot of teams that we thought were going to be at the top of college football really take a dive in their standings, whether that's just because of COVID or we're seeing that they're just not as good as normal.
yeah, I mean, a lot of the teams that you expected to be up there are up there right now. You still got Alabama at number 1. You got Ohio State at number 3. You got Clemson at number 4. You got Texas A&M and Florida knocking at the door behind them. So and I think that in terms of that, it's kind of going as expected. I think that the bigger letdowns have come in the Big 12, where I mean, they're already, the way I see it, they're not going to have a playoff team.
Mhm.
I think Oklahoma State had to win out to get in, which they didn't do. Texas and Oklahoma both the 2 losses. This will be the first time in a while that Oklahoma isn't coming out of the Big 12 to represent them in the playoffs. They got off to a rough start. New quarterback Spencer Rattler. They've been playing better of late, as has Texas, but I think those early season losses might be held against them. I don't think the Big 12 is getting a team this year. And
Mhm.
then in the Big 10, everyone knew Ohio State was going to be at the top. You expect Wisconsin to be somewhere near the top. They're still in it in spite of only playing 2 games so far. Graham Mertz is looking like a stud, but they said they've only played 2 games. They've had 2 canceled. They're probably only going to play a 6-game season, so it might be tough for them. But at the rest of the top of the Big 10, Penn State, Michigan State, I mean, very bad. I don't know how Jim Harbaugh hasn't been fired yet. He's underachieved at Michigan ever since he's been there. He hasn't even gotten the chance to get his butt kicked by Ohio State yet this year. So I think this has to be Harbaugh's last year in Ann Arbor. Then James Franklin's on the hot seat. I'm not sure if they'll let him go, but 0-4 start for Penn State. Not a whole lot of people saw that coming, especially with losses to teams like Nebraska, Maryland, Indiana. Indiana has turned out to be a pretty good football team.
Yeah. So I've been keeping up with this a little bit. I definitely think that we're going to see Jim Harbaugh gone. The one thing that complicates it is that he's making over $7 million. And, Michigan's already made cuts to their athletic department, and he took a 10% cut this year. But with him not performing up to standard, and on top of that, how much he's making, I can't imagine that Michigan's going to want to keep him around. I think James Franklin has a little bit more time. He's been able to bring in some pretty high recruiting classes over the past couple of years. So, I think they're going to want to wait and see if he's going to be able to turn anything around. I think they had a couple running backs who have gone down, and one of them had to medically retire.
Yeah, that's Journey Brown, their running back. They just announced last week he can't play football anymore. There's some health condition. Micah Parsons, their best linebacker, probably a top 5 pick in the NFL draft, sitting out the season. And then at the top, Sean Clifford just does not look good this year. Franklin today during his press conference said he wasn't going to name a starter for their upcoming game, but I would be very surprised to see him bring Sean Clifford back out there, especially with how Will Levis played. Almost led them to a big comeback victory against Nebraska.
Yeah, and one of the things that I've had a little bit of confusion about is where did they bring in their offensive coordinator from? Was it Minnesota that they brought in a offensive coordinator from?
I'm not sure. As you know, I'm not exactly the biggest Penn State fan. You might call me a hater. So I didn't know. I don't really know their coordinator situation. I just know they had some bad luck early.
I know I've heard from some Penn State fans that they brought in this offensive coordinator this past year to kind of spark their offense a little bit more. And I think since you've seen Saquon Barkley leave and Miles Sanders leave, you've been seeing more of a need for more creative playmaking out there instead of just relying on one person to get it done.
Yeah, that's a good point. When you have guys like Saquon and Sanders who are both not only great running backs, but big threats to catch the ball out of the backfield, that really takes a lot of pressure off your quarterback. And then with McSorley as the quarterback of those teams, his mobility really gave them another asset. So right now, Penn State is really struggling to run the ball, placing a lot of distress on their quarterbacks, and Sean Clifford did not handle it well, turned the ball over quite a few times. So I don't know if that's a scheme or if they just don't have the talent in the backfield this year, but it's a rough start in Happy Valley.
Yeah. So moving on to a team that's doing a little bit better, might be a little bit closer to your heart. How is the Fighting Irish doing this year?
Well, don't get me going because I could talk for about an hour and a half on this. Obviously beat Clemson 2 weeks ago. Literally the first major win of my lifetime. Notre Dame's been known to choke in big games. Finally didn't. Granted, obviously Trevor Lawrence was out. But from an objective perspective, I'm not sure him being in. They might have won with him in, but it still, I think, would have been a close game because DJ Uiagalelei. There we go. DJ Uiagalelei played a really good game, was very accurate, didn't turn the ball over. So I think the one thing you can say about this Notre Dame team as opposed to maybe other Notre Dame teams, one, they're deeper. And two, I don't think you're going to see them losing in the blowout fashions to competition like Ohio State or Alabama or Clemson like they have in the past.
Yeah, I think in the past they had to deal with some other stuff, players having fake girlfriends and whatnot.
Oh, okay. Well, it's been nice talking to you, Ben.
But let's move on to what's the Heisman Trophy winner going to look like this year?
Well, he's going to look like a quarterback. I'll tell you that. I don't really see anyone else. If I had to pick before the season a non-quarterback to win, it would be Travis Etienne, and he's been good. As has Kyle Pitts, the tight end for Florida. A couple guys on Alabama who running back and receiver, their names are kind of slipping my mind right now. But right now the quarterback plays at such a high level that I think it comes down to 5 quarterbacks. Lawrence, who I originally had out of my Heisman talk because I'm missing the 2 games, but then I realized I had Justin Fields in there as well. And even with Trevor Lawrence missing 2 games, with the late start the Big Ten got, Lawrence is still going to end up playing in 2 more games than Fields. Fields, obviously, he's only going to be playing in 7 regular season games this year. So far, been unbelievable as expected. I saw a stat earlier. He's accounted for 13 touchdowns, either through the air with his legs, and he's only thrown 11 incomplete passes so far in the season. So he's got more touchdowns than incomplete passes through their first couple games. So that's obviously a very good stat. And then 3 other quarterbacks that could be in contention for this are Mac Jones, quarterback of Alabama. He's doing some pretty good things, but he actually has less passing yards than Kyle Trask, the quarterback for Florida. Florida is still looking very good. They're ranked number 6 right now behind Texas A&M at 5, so potentially playoff contenders. And then finally, the quarterback for BYU, Zach Wilson. BYU might be – I don't really see this being the year that a group of 5 team gets into the playoff. Granted, if they expand it, I think BYU and Cincinnati are in for sure if they keep things up. But BYU's been pretty dominant this year. They beat a good group of 5 team in Houston, and then they blew out Boise State, who is a perennial group of 5 powerhouse. So I really don't I don't foresee them making the playoffs this year, but BYU and Cincinnati both look legit. And Zach Wilson from BYU, very good quarterback.
I think we have to address the other kind of surprise teams this year that we have. Coastal Carolina, who they're undefeated, correct?
They are.
And so is Marshall.
Marshall is also undefeated.
So, that's I think we're definitely seeing some weird times in 2020 outside of the fact that we have this pandemic going on. We got a lot of teams that are creeping into the top 25 that I've never seen in the top 25 before in my life.
Yeah, another one for you is Liberty, who was an FCS school just a couple years ago. They joined the FBS as an independent a few years ago. Been historically terrible, but they're undefeated right now too. They hired Hugh Freeze, who was the former head coach of Ole Miss, had to leave because of a lot of sanctions. But you also might know, if you watch The Blind Side, as Michael Orr's high school coach. They called him Coach Cotton in the movie, but that was Hugh Freeze. And he's done a very good job with Liberty. They're already speculating that he's going to take the South Carolina job since South Carolina just made the decision to fire Will Muschamp yesterday. But yeah, there are a lot of group of 5 schools that are playing really good football. And like I said, I don't see any of them making the playoff, but usually when it comes to New Year's Six games, you have like one clear-cut favorite from the group of five to make those games. Right now, you got Cincinnati, you got BYU, you said you got Marshall, you got Coastal, and you got Liberty.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of unprecedented to just, that's a lot of teams outside the Power Five that, we're seeing actually be in contention for a playoff spot.
Yeah, I mean, as 2020 couldn't have gotten any crazier. I'm a little interested to see how potential cancellations are going to impact the way the committee chooses their top four, because with the ACC, SEC, Big 12 starting early, they've had room for postponements. I mean, just about every ACC team's had a game postponed so far. I actually don't think there's been any in the Big 12. And then there's been a few SEC games that have been canceled. A&M's about to be postponed for the second week in a row. Bama was postponed last week. But the issue with conferences like the Big 10 and the Pac-12 is they didn't leave themselves any room to reschedule games if they're canceled. So you already see Ohio State's going to be playing 7 games. Wisconsin's probably going to be playing 6. And that could be your Big 10 championship game between Wisconsin and Ohio State, 2 games that have played. Maybe by the time it's all said and done, those 2 schools will have played combined less games than the teams playing the SEC or ACC championship games.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're thinking, those SEC and ACC teams, they're probably going to at least get double-digit games in this season, whereas I honestly think everyone's going to be pushing it in the Big 10 to get 5 games. Just the way that things are going, 8 games in 8 weeks is not an easy thing to do.
No, absolutely not.
So, but Herd, thank you so much for joining us and giving us our update. We hope to have you back next week. We're going to now move on to Phil and Tolly here talking about soccer and some other updates from around the world. So thank you again, Herd.
Yep, thanks.
Thank you, Herd. So, Phil.
I mean, wonderful stuff from Herd.
Yeah.
Great job
very
from
much.
him.
Yeah, excellent.
So, I mean, the seamless transitions are just incredible. Well, the amount of work we're putting in through Zoom, it's just amazing. You wouldn't believe what the production room looks like on the side.
Yeah, the COVID special.
But yeah, I mean, let's hop into soccer, man. I think it's time. It's time for us to let these emotions out about what's going on right now.
It's football. Come on.
Okay,
you can't do this to
football.
me.
It's fine. I'm cool with calling it football, but I don't want anyone to get confused. I don't want to sound like too much of a hipster either. But yeah, we've got an international break going on right now. For those that aren't familiar, international break is when you meet up with your country team rather than your club team. So, I mean, there's exciting stuff going on. The U.S. just dropped 6 goals on Panama.
Spain just smashed Germany as well.
Yeah, Spain. I think Spain was 6-0 over Germany. And you get some cool scores, you get some exciting stuff. You get to see the countries play together. But let's be honest, man. The Nations League, is it the worst thing? Is it the worst idea they've had from UEFA? Somehow, the worst.
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right there. I mean, out of all the things that have happened in FIFA, somehow the international break is the worst. I mean, out of all of the corruption and all these dodgy deals, somehow the international break is still the worst. I mean, it's horrific. Yeah, it's like watching the USA in the Olympics when they're just playing like teams that are not notorious for playing basketball. I mean, you just know that the scores are going to be wild, and if you're a true lover of the sport, you hate this period. I mean, this is the worst time.
Yeah, because you're not actually watching football, right? No. You're not watching teams that are like practicing together, working together, perfecting their crafts. You're just seeing like groups of players that all happen to be from the same country, like meeting up for like a week, and they're like hanging out, playing on the field, and then they're gone again, And the craziest thing to me is this is generally the mid-November international break is the longest one. during the club season, at least the first half of the club season. And you've got 3 games during the pandemic. So you've got teams that are like club teams, Chelsea's, Manchester United, Barcelona, Real Madrid. They're holding basically a bubble for all of their players to make sure that they're all safe. And UEFA being the governing body of soccer in Europe, they said, let's just send them all home to their countries.
Yeah, just send them all over the world.
Right. And they're traveling across Europe. Their bubbles are being breached. And you're getting COVID positive tests from almost every club now.
And it's no wonder.
Yeah, Ukraine just played a game, and they had 4 players that tested positive immediately after finishing the game. So they're infecting the entire Swiss national team with COVID-19.
It's crazy. And it's no wonder, is it? It's really no wonder, because I mean, look at let's take France. I mean, you have players who play in France, Spain, Italy, Portugal, England. I mean, they're all having separate lockdowns and separate issues, and you're flying all of these players from different parts of the country as well, all over to play a game with a change room with players that they have never been exposed to before. I mean, you have a few that play on the same team, but not many. I mean, it's absurd that it's happening. I understand that UEFA and FIFA feel like these international tournaments need to keep moving, but when is enough where you see the Premier Leagues and these even singular clubs are getting COVID within their little bubbles? So I mean, what did they expect here?
Yeah, I honestly don't know what they expected. And on top of that, this isn't a major tournament, right? It's the Nations League. It's glorified exhibition matches that for some reason UEFA decided to try and monetize, right? They put a little sponsorship logo on it and called it a real tournament. But really, these games don't have to happen. There's hardly any relevance. There were two or three play-in games to qualify for the Euro Championships, but those could have been held separately.
Definitely.
And you're already in a compressed schedule, right? The season is going at a ridiculous pace, so players are getting injured, and I just don't understand the thought process where you think, send them away for 3 more games for their national team when everyone's exhausted, everyone's at risk of catching a pandemic and getting like severely ill, or getting, their family members or whoever ill. And it doesn't make sense. It's just money just rules everything, I guess.
Yeah, that's the big issue here, I think. I mean, it's evident to see that UEFA and FIFA clearly, they don't really care about the players. They only care about making the money from the tournaments, because they could have pushed this back. I mean, this is not this isn't a tournament that had to happen right now. They could have pushed that to the end of the season. And then if they left it to the end of the season, all of the leagues that have accommodated to this Nations League could have brought their games forward. And then these players could have exited their current club bubbles, gone into an international bubble, and job solved. But clearly they're missing their slice of the pie, because they're watching the Spanish League, Italian League, Premier League, all making their money in Ligue 1, and they want a slice of that pie. I mean, it's just it's quite terrible to see, and it's unfortunate, because I don't think, well, I genuinely think they just probably don't care, but they haven't taken into consideration all of the people who work within those clubs who will be dramatically affected if one of the players does get COVID, or multiple players get COVID, and they have to shut down the team. I mean, that's a massive issue, because you could shut down a league quite quickly.
Yeah, there's a lack of foresight, I think, or a lack of precaution being taken, where it's great to have the international friendlies, or they're not quite friendlies, they're technically real matches now, but it's great to have them play for their national teams. And in a normal year, I don't think anybody has that much of a problem with it. But this isn't a normal year. We've touched upon it on every other sport we've talked about so far through the podcast. It's not a normal year. 2020 is different. And, you know, I think UEFA and FIFA and all of the individual leagues, they're going to realize how much money they can lose if games have to be shut down. And that could happen because of an international break like that. So it annoys me. I will say.
And it's a very strange time too, because the international break just happened, and I've read some news transitioning to the Premier League. I read some news that they've had meetings with the boards of directors with teams and some key figures within the Premier League that they're potentially thinking about letting fans into the stadiums before Christmas.
Yeah, I saw that.
And the UK is locked down for anyone who's watching who doesn't currently know the status of the UK. Yeah, the UK is currently in lockdown. So that is a massively ambitious move there.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that's going to happen. The UK just announced another lockdown, right? Like it was very, very recently that the whole country was told, you know, we're going back into lockdown. And, you know, it's code red, basically. Everyone stay in your homes and be safe. So I don't know why they thought, okay, now's the perfect time to say, hey, let's let some fans in. Family members.
Yeah, family members is understandable. Yeah, because I mean, in a 40,000 stadium, no one's going to argue that family members are going to cause any serious issues, because you can spread them out. You put 20 seats between them if you really wanted to, but you start letting fans into these stadiums. Understandably, they're not going to gather. They're not going to just arrive at the game all separately and stay away from each other. They're going to gather. They're going to go to pubs. I mean, it's kind of a nonsensical idea. I think it's more of a PR stunt than anything else. I hope that's the case. But you don't really know with the Premier League at the moment. I mean, it'd be interesting to see.
Yeah, people want a sense of normalcy, right?
Yeah.
People are they're waiting for, you know, I don't know, the black shroud to be lifted and everyone's allowed to act how we used to act, right? We got used to living like that, but we're not there yet.
No.
And I think the Premier League wanted to make people feel like we're getting closer, but we're not. We haven't even had a full winter with this thing yet.
Yeah.
And other leagues, I think, will be able to do it. Other nations have taken it more seriously. The U.S., obviously, I think, is going into another major lockdown soon, because every country is now a hotspot and a red zone, or every state, I should say. So I know in Spain and in France, they've been allowing fans back, but I don't know. The cynic in me says everything's, you know, going to go to crap pretty quickly.
Yeah, talking of going to crap, the Premier League table, what an interesting sight. I mean, if you woke up last year and saw this table, you'd think it was a joke.
Yeah, I think that the Onion wrote it, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, look, top three makes sense. We have Leicester, Tottenham, and Liverpool currently. But then you start scrolling down, you see Manchester City, 10th, Arsenal, 11th, Man United, 14th. And Champions League contenders last year, Sheffield United, and 20th. I mean, who saw that coming?
Couldn't have predicted Sheffield to drop that much. I mean, I would think that usually the second season's a little harder for teams that got promoted, but 20th, they can't even get points right now.
Yeah, and they're conceding goals like it's a job. And they can't stop anyone at the moment. I think the biggest news for me personally is Man United. I mean, they've been on it. Yeah, I mean they've been struggling for a while, and it seems like there's something wrong in that changing room. You see the old Man United legends, your Ryan Giggs, your Paul Scholes, Gary Neville's. I mean, they're all talking about there's something wrong in that changing room, and I think it's just a lack of leadership. I don't think they have a general in there, or a player who's taking the other players by the scruff of the neck and telling them they need to get their business together.
Yeah, I think they thought Harry Maguire was going to do that.
Yeah,
I mean, they spent big on him, but
massively.
I don't see – there's not really much massive about him besides his forehead, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Big
Uh,
slab head.
yeah, he doesn't seem like that much of a leader. I mean, I've seen
Yeah.
him rifle passes at Paul Pogba just
Yeah.
at his shins and then get mad at him
Mhm.
when he can't control it, but that's not really leadership.
Yeah. No.
Um, I, I don't know. I
Yeah.
think they want McTominay to be their next,
Yeah,
big
but that's gonna be
Man
a couple
United
of
hero.
years.
Yeah, but he's still
Yeah. I
young.
mean, yeah. I mean, Maguire. He seems. It's maybe it's too early to call, but he is struggling. I mean, for the price tag they paid for him. I mean, this with Pogba signing too. I mean, he hasn't performed well, and I think that's more positioning and the players around him more than anything. I mean, I'd hate to take it the responsibility away from him, but when you saw him at Juventus, he was an attacking midfielder, and that was his job. You didn't see him in this CDM role. I mean, he's not a Paul Scholes or a Kante or someone who can sit back there and defend. And I hate to say it, but I think he's wasting his career at Man United. It seems like. I mean, look at him at Juventus. He was one of the best players around. He was always in the Ballon d'Or race while he was there, or in talks for the Young Player of the Year consistently. But now he's not even close.
Yeah, and you see it with France too. When he gets to play with a player like Conte,
Oh, mm-hmm.
he's incredible. He shines in the French national team. I mean, they won the World Cup, obviously with his with that too. But I don't see anybody like that at United. I mean, I think they thought Fred was going to be a similar player to Conte, but Fred wants to play attacking midfielder.
Yeah.
Scott McTominay is decent as a box to box, but he can't. Nobody really breaks up play like a Conte, like a Scholes,
Yeah.
guys like
No.
that. Michael Essien.
Yeah.
Those are hard players to find, and I think Pogba had Vidal for a while he was at Juventus.
Yeah, and he had his freedom as well with Pirlo. I mean, Pirlo
Yeah,
just sat in the semicircle, started spraying passes. I mean, you give Pogba freedom, he's a different player. As you said, you see him in France, he's on another level. But I think I'll tell you where I think he would fit. I think he'd fit in a PSG, a
yeah.
team with lots of attacking options where he's not the focal point of the attack, where he can play his magical balls and go on runs because the other defenders are scared of everyone else who's on the team, like your Neymars and Mbappe's.
Yeah, and he would have Idrissa Gueye next to him, which I think
Yeah.
would be pretty nice for him.
Mm-hmm.
So let's we're kind of in the world sports section at this point.
Yeah.
So let's shift focus a little bit. I mean, golf is a world sport, but obviously the Masters took place here in the U.S.
Yeah.
We wanted to touch on a little bit of Dustin Johnson being the Masters champion. What did you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, what an incredible performance. Anyone who watched the Masters over the weekend, it was unbelievable. Minus 20 under par. I mean, whether that could be recreated ever again is a question. Maybe for Dustin Johnson and for the rest of the Masters tour. I mean, that is an incredible feat.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Everything worked. Everything worked. I mean, it was a truly incredible performance.
And the Masters is considered generally probably the toughest tournament of the season, or at least, I mean, obviously all of the majors
toughest
are gonna be
courses.
tough. But yeah,
Yeah.
Augusta is an incredibly difficult course. And I mean,
Mm-hmm.
honestly, if you watched even the highlights, he was making it look easy all weekend long.
It looked like a pitch and putt. I mean,
Right.
You're looking at like incredible players. Your veterans like Tiger Woods. You saw him struggle. You saw your Rory McIlroy struggle, or struggle compared to Dustin Johnson. He looked like he was playing on an Xbox or a PlayStation, just having a good old time.
Yeah, and touching on Tiger Woods, he had he shot a 10 on,
Yeah.
I forget which hole it was, but I mean, it just blew up any chance he had. I mean, I don't think he was catching Johnson anyways.
Yeah, no.
But yeah, his final round, he shot a 10 on one hole.
Yeah, it was a strange weekend. I mean, they got postponed for a while for bad weather, so I assumed that would affect their performances. Whether Dustin Johnson had a little deal with Mother Nature to give him some lucky wind, but it just looked like he took COVID seriously and he put in the work. I mean, you see him come back these past few tournaments, and he's on fire, hit the ground running. I mean, let's see if he can continue this through the up and coming tournaments. But it'd be great to see him keep progressing on and doing well, I think.
Yeah, I mean, he's always been up there, right? But I think he might have finally gotten to that peak and gotten over the hump, and now he might be probably the best in the world. I mean, this weekend he was.
I mean, you can't argue. Yeah, you can't argue that at all.
Switching over.
Talking of best in the world.
Yeah, Hamilton. Right, you're Englishman.
Very excited about that. So for the Formula One fans, I'm sure you've heard this, but for everyone else out there, you might not know. Lewis Hamilton just won his 7th world title, matching Michael Schumacher's incredible record. I mean, seven world titles. They both were 35 when they both got their 7th world title. I mean, he had an incredible race and another incredible year. What he's doing on the track is incredible. To be this consistent year in and year out, it's a special time for the sport. And I think people like him are almost generational. You don't get many drivers who can perform that consistently year after year. I mean, he hasn't signed his contract yet, and I'm sure when he goes to Mercedes asking for some money, the Mercedes are going to want Lewis Hamilton's going to want a lot of money from Mercedes, because I think he's going to beat this record, and he is the piece that Mercedes needed. And talking to Mercedes, they won their 7th consecutive Constructors' Championship. They're making it look easy. I mean, Hamilton and Bottas are consistently performing at an excellent level, and you wonder when that dynasty is going to stop, when they're going to stop winning. I mean, you think that Red Bull would be the team to kind of challenge Mercedes, but Max Verstappen looks like he's doing great work and doing well. However, his teammate Alex Albon, he just doesn't look like he's there. He looks like he doesn't belong in that Red Bull team. I mean, he's young, but I think if they really want to challenge, they need someone like the Daniel Ricciardo that they let go to Renault to try and take them to that next level. And it seems at the moment that he's just not the man for the job.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot has to be said for Mercedes scouting team. I don't know if it's necessarily a scouting team or just a negotiating team, because I mean, you got to keep the best too on top of finding the best. And I don't know do you think Hamilton will win his 8th this season coming up, or do you think it'll be?
Yeah, you know what? I think I can comfortably say, I think he will. Yeah, I think he'll go for 8. There's something different about Lewis Hamilton. You heard him in the last race saying to the children around the world that you need to believe in yourself. And I think all of the other issues and community-based work that he's doing, and the social work that he's doing, that he's really representing Great Britain, and especially black athletes. He's doing a fantastic job with all of his community-based work, and he's an inspiration across the world. I mean, he's really truly giving everyone a chance. He came up when he was young. His family unfortunately didn't have hardly any money, so his dad was working 3-4 jobs to get him to that position, and now 7-time world champion. It just proves that with hard work, dedication, and obviously some God-given talent, that you can do anything you really want to set your mind to. So I mean, it's incredible to see him perform the way he is consistently, and I hope it continues.
Yeah, and like Hamilton, I mean, you've got Marcus Rashford, the Manchester United player. He's what, 23 years old or something? Maybe turned 24. And he's like leading the charge right, about fighting childhood hunger, not just
Yeah,
in
you're
the
getting
UK,
school meals.
but he's pushing it, to a worldwide scale, and it's just nice to see what a lot of these athletes are doing with their platform, whether it's in the UK with Rashford and Hamilton, or guys like LeBron James, who's building schools and just pushing towards the importance of education. The entire NBA was pushing towards the importance of voting,
Yeah.
even opening up their stadiums, or their arenas, I should say, to allow people to vote and stay socially distanced while doing it. And people say sports and politics don't mix, but it's impossible to
Oh yeah, of course.
live. If you're a person at all, which all athletes are people, you're going to have some sort of political opinion, regardless of whether or not people want to. The last world sport, put it in quotes, that I wanted to touch on real quick was tennis. We just saw Nadal, who's been having a pretty good year this year. He lost to Team in the ATP Nitto finals. They do a little bit of a group stage there, but it looks like Nadal, has gone down. And it looks like Djokovic has advanced, and a lot of the other big names are going to still be playing. But were you surprised to see Nadal get dropped?
Yeah, I was very surprised. I almost thought it was a glitch in the system. I mean, Tiem's a good player, but you see Nadal's Djokovic, you just expect them to go through to the final rounds almost comfortably. I mean, he's been doing it for over a decade now, consistently performing at such a fantastic level. I mean, his skill is incredible, and so to see him get knocked out at an early stage like that, it's worrying. But I think we'll have to see him in a few more tournaments. I'm just hoping he doesn't have any niggling injuries or anything that are keeping him back, like your Andy Murray's, who was keeping his injuries locked away. And I think hopefully that's not the issue with Nadal.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen him battle back from injuries in the past, and he always seems to come back. So I know he's starting to get older now, but I hope we at least have a few more years of Nadal, being at his best, because he's just so exciting to watch.
Yeah. I think hopefully continue that consistency. I mean, it's good to see Djokovic still performing at his usual self. Such an incredible player on grass and clay. I mean, he's really just a fantastic spectacle.
Yeah. So that'll conclude. We'll just consider it the world sports roundup, or whatever we want to call it. But Ben has hopped back on. Welcome back, buddy. And we also have our interview guest, Matthew Schubert's here. Ben, let's do a little intro on him, huh?
All right. Well, we got Matt Schubert joining us right now from beautiful Knightdale, North Carolina. Looking very swaggy right now. He's a current coach at Barton College in Wilson, North Carolina, and a former pro basketball player. So, how you doing, Matt?
Hey guys, thanks for having me. Doing well.
Welcome, Matt. Welcome.
Holly.
How are you doing? Doing well?
Yeah, man. Everything's great. I miss you though.
Yeah, I miss you too.
Well, it's good to have you on, Matt. So, for those of you who don't know Matt, he's a great guy. He's been putting in a lot of work at Barton College for the past couple years, and I think everyone here listening would love to hear a little bit more about your basketball career, Matt. So just give us a rundown of where you went to college and really how you got into playing professional basketball.
Yeah, for sure. So I played basketball my whole life growing up, and I started college at Point Park University in Pittsburgh. I did my freshman and sophomore year there. My freshman year, we actually finished 29-2, and we were third in the country.
Wow.
Our team had 4 All-Americans on just that team. So I played 19 minutes the entire season that year. So I had to wait my time for sure, but I mean, I got to practice against some of the best players in the country every day. After 2 years at Point Park, I transferred to Bard College, a small Division III school in New York, about an hour and a half outside of New York City. And I had a pretty good junior and senior year statistically. which allowed me to continue to pursue basketball. And growing up, I think everyone has like those dreams of like playing pro sports to some extent, and then as you get older, you kind of realize maybe the NBA isn't realistic. But something that I didn't really know was that there was a lot of other options to play internationally in other countries. So I had an opportunity to go to Brazil in Rio de Janeiro, and I played for a club called Botafogo. It was in, I guess, what would be considered like the second league, not the main league in Brazil. So it was a league of teams in the state of Rio de Janeiro. So Rio de Janeiro is a state, but then it's also a city in Brazil. And we played teams in the state, but I lived in the city. The club was in the city, so I lived, like 3 blocks from the beach in Rio de Janeiro. It was pretty amazing. I actually left college early. I technically, I graduated from college, but I didn't go to my graduation. I left about a month and a half before school ended to go down and start playing. So it was I was there for a year. We finished second in the league that year, and I had a pretty successful season myself statistically. And then I pursued another opportunity in Sao Paulo, Brazil, that ended up kind of backfiring on me. It was with a much bigger club that I was going to get paid much more. And then things ended up falling through the last minute. And then I had some offers to continue playing in other smaller countries in Europe, but nothing really worked out in terms of the situation I was looking for. So unfortunately, my professional career was very short-lived, but it was a good experience for sure.
Hey, it's not something that everyone can say they've done in their life, especially living in a city as beautiful as Rio de Janeiro.
Yeah, no, it was fun. I had fun, and when you're playing internationally, it's a lot different than I was used to over here, being in college and playing AAU and things like that. They basically own you, with paying you and your contract, and it's really obviously a full-time job. You're at, we practiced 3 times a day on days that we weren't playing games. We would have individual training in the morning, come back for more like skill instruction and like conditioning in the afternoon, and then a team practice at night. That would happen. That happened that would be like 5 days a week on days that we didn't have games. So it was pretty intense, but at the same time, you get better at basketball very, very quickly, and you notice improvements in your game. So it's pretty cool to see.
Yeah, I was actually going to touch on a little bit of like the differences between here and there. I think one of the questions that I definitely want to know is how are the systems like? I think America, you're used to very particular systems and the way coaches teach you certain things. Was the way that Brazil, like in those teams there, were they teaching you a different way, or was it actually quite similar to America?
Right. So I found out pretty quickly that, well, first off, no one on the coaching staff on my team spoke English. I was the only American on the team. And then there were 2 other guys on the team that kind of spoke like half English, kind of broken type English. So they would translate everything for me. So the first, I'd say few weeks, few games, I was kind of hesitant just because of playing, like you said, in a new system and making sure, running the plays and things like that. But then, pretty quickly I found out if I just scored, the coach didn't care if I knew any plays. So that's kind of that's kind of just what I went with, and it ended up working out. So
yeah,
I think if you can score, you can play in any language.
Yeah, I think we see that with Luka Doncic.
Right.
He can do anything he wants. What was the language barrier like though in game? Because I played basketball in high school, and even then the communication level you have to have with your team, you know, it's pretty intense. And, you know, you're talking about professional basketball. There has to be some kind of like level of, you know, how are you able to communicate with your teammates if only two of them are able to speak broken English?
Yeah. So there were like very universal type phrases or words that I learned and picked up on that I used, but I wasn't really speaking much like to my teammates, or to, you know, to the opponents, the coaches, the refs, anyone really. They would speak to me mostly in Portuguese, and, you know, I would just look at them and I had no idea what they were saying. But I think with basketball, you know, there's pretty basic principles that if you understand and you understand the concepts that you're running in terms of especially on the defensive side, if you understand the principles and how you're playing ball screens and things like that, you know, I was able to get by. And then I picked up on a few things that in terms of communication, that made things easier. But, you know, even the duration of my time there, I never became fluent in Portuguese. I was pretty ignorant to the fact that, you know, I just assumed Rio de Janeiro is a major world city. I assumed people would speak English, but no one spoke English there. So.
How did that affect you psychologically? I mean, it must be quite difficult if you can't really form great relationships with your teammates and your coaches.
Yeah, you're kind of just like by yourself all the time. And, you know, I didn't mind it. You know, me personally, I moved around a lot, so I was used to new environments and things.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it really had a negative impact on me. Definitely not when I was playing. That's for sure. I think maybe more so, you know, outside of the gym and outside of basketball, when, you know, you had days off and things like that, and kind of going around the city and just being, you know, on your own, really, not being able to communicate with people, and just have like everyday type conversations. Going to restaurants, some restaurants would have English menus, others would not, so it was kind of like hit or miss. You know, I would just hope that the menu would have pictures pictures on it, and I'd just point to the pictures, things like that. But yeah, I mean, you're pretty much on your own. In my situation, being the only American on the team, and really being one of the only people that spoke English. So.
Yeah. Do you think psychologically it benefited you? I mean, from my perspective, I moved to the US, which is a different country, but they speak the same language. But I was in a quite similar situation with you when I moved to China. And I feel like it gave me a cultural awareness. It almost showed me that there was something missing from just my global awareness that I needed to take note of. And I think it's an experience that I'm sure you would recommend it to anyone who has the chance to do it. Would you recommend them to go through what you went through, or?
1,000%, 1,000%. You know, experiencing different cultures, different people, being like completely outside of your comfort zone, and you know, in an environment where I don't want to say necessarily you're a minority, but almost like to an extent of, you know, you're an outsider, I think is a better term to use. You're definitely an outlier in terms of all aspects of the culture. So, but, you know, that being said, you know, it challenges you. There's bad days, of course, but I was always super positive, and, you know, I enjoyed it. I have nothing but positive experiences from it. So I would recommend, you know, maybe if people are more, you know, extroverted and they need that, you know, camaraderie type thing, maybe it wouldn't be an environment for them, but you know, for me, it worked.
Yeah, I think your situation is a perfect example of people have this kind of narrow-minded goal in their respective sports, whether it's you go to college and it's the NBA and you're tunneled to the NBA, you play baseball and it's to the MLB, or you play football and it's to the Premier League, or etc. I think your experience showcased the fact that you should be open to these other areas and other leagues, that going just to this set league like the NBA is not the end of your career at all. I think lots of players, they don't realize that they have that option, that they could utilize another country to bolster their skills and maybe come back a lot stronger, whether it's professionally or just personally.
I agree. And I think, basketball, luckily for me, my situation, basketball is a global sport. If you're playing baseball or American football, they're definitely not as global. Football or soccer, more of a global sport. Basketball is definitely a global sport. So, I think a lot of it would depend on the sport you play, but also, like you said, being open-minded to different situations. I mean, you find out pretty quickly, if you're going to be an NBA player or not. And obviously, I realized that I wasn't. So, but I still had goals and things that I wanted to pursue, and understanding that there were other routes. Obviously, you're not living an NBA style life, but you can still live a comfortable life, and you can still continue to. I think the biggest thing was continuing to play, postgraduate. For me, meant a lot to me. So it was something I had my mindset on going into my senior year of college.
Yeah, excellent.
So moving on a little bit from that professional side of basketball to our local NBA, Matt, how do you see your 76ers moving into this season? How comfortable are you with them?
Yeah, so I mean they've made a lot of front office changes. Bringing Daryl Morey in is definitely someone who thinks outside the box, and I think with the roster the way it is, with Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid and Tobias Harris, and I guess you have to throw Al Horford in that mix with his contract. You need someone who's going to think outside the box with the roster that they have. Obviously, Daryl Morey showed in Houston that he's very analytical driven, and infamous for kind of the small ball approach, which the Sixers are kind of the opposite of with their roster right now. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of moves they make, or if they don't make any moves, what type of systems Doc Rivers is looks to implement with the roster that they have. I think that the whole process era and the first few years of Embiid and Simmons was a lot of focus on player development, and you have two all-stars on your team. Tobias Harris is a borderline all-star. Al Horford in his prime was an all-star level player. So, it's more of a winning approach now compared to development. So obviously Doc Rivers' pedigree, I think brings that, his experience coaching compared to Brett Brown, who was given probably one of the worst rosters in the history of the NBA a few years ago, when they won, I think, what was it, like 9, 10, 11 games, whatever it was that one year. So they're in a much different place. I'm a fan of Simmons and Embiid together. I know people are saying you have to split them up. I think that that letting Jimmy Butler go in the offseason was, I didn't like that from the beginning. And obviously, he showed how valuable he was with Miami this year. And what the leadership that he was able to bring. So, I wish that they had Jimmy Butler for the full season. 2 years ago, they acquired him halfway through the year. So it's always I think it's tough to implement implement players, especially of that caliber, into a roster halfway through the season. But I mean, I'm still optimistic. There's no denying that they need more shooters. The way the NBA is now, they need to figure that out. But I think that they can win with Simmons and Embiid.
Mm-hmm. Now, one of the most interesting storylines of this trade season right now is that James Harden is going to be looking for a new team here, and he's kind of put it at, I either want to go to the Sixers or I want to go to the Brooklyn Nets. What do you think that, how do you think a package for Harden would even look like, or do you think it would even be possible to bring him to the Sixers?
So the Sixers, a package with the Sixers would probably, I don't know if Embiid or Simmons would be included. Let's just say that if they want to keep Embiid and Simmons, they're pretty much going to have to give up every other impact player on their roster plus picks. And I think Harden has 2 years left on his contract. So it's more of a win now approach, with a big three, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And then after 2 years, kind of evaluate where you're at. I mean, I like James Harden's game personally. Obviously, it didn't work out in Houston. I don't know if pairing him with Russell Westbrook was the best pairing.
No.
But I think that it's proven that you need someone to score or make plays at the end of game, in the half court, especially in the fourth quarter in the playoffs. And that's the main thing in my opinion, that the Sixers were missing. Embiid and Simmons haven't been, the guys that you just give the ball to and you can kind of depend on them to make a shot or make something happen. James Harden is the complete opposite. He can get a shot from anywhere at any time. So, I think it would be interesting to see what they put around them. But I would be excited about it if I see Woj tweet that James Harden is going to Philadelphia. Like, I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I think right now they're at a standstill with the Brooklyn Nets. Reports are coming back that the Rockets want either Durant or Kyrie in the trade, which totally defeats the purpose of why Harden wants to go to that team in the first place. And, the only other way that Harden is getting to the Nets is if they completely gut their younger players like Dinwiddie, Karis LeVert, Jarrett Allen, and probably a couple picks.
Yeah, it is an option, but it doesn't seem like a long-term option. And the question then still arises. We see with Houston that Russell Westbrook and Harden, they struggled together. I mean, that was evident. Can Harden play with other big players? I feel like that is a key question that we haven't yet seen. Whether he could do it with KD and Kyrie or Ben Simmons and Embiid. But it would just be an interesting thing to see. I can't imagine it's going to work very well. I think if you're looking for the future of the franchise, it's not a great move. I mean, for a short term, I think it would be fantastic, but we'll see.
Yeah, and I also wonder if it's too early for the Nets to even consider blowing up their young core to try and get a third superstar, because they don't even know how well Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant are going to play together. And on top of that, you would end up with two ball dominant guards, playing borderline ISO ball, and also keeping the ball out of the hands of their best player, who I would say is Kevin Durant. And it just makes me wonder, like, why the Nets would want to do it. I understand wanting to get an MVP like Harden. Don't get me wrong. It always, if you can get the best in the league, you should try and go for it. But you also got to think about chemistry and how people are going to fit into a system. And, Steve Nash has got to figure out a system for Kyrie and Kevin Durant. And then you throw James Harden into that, and, there's probably a lot of thinking going on in Steve Nash's head right now.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Ben.
I think the Nets also have to keep in mind the blunder that they had just a few years ago with the Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett trade, where that pretty much set the Boston Celtics up for the success that they've had. So I would be very wary if I was the Nets about trying to move forward with this big three and rather develop your younger players and have a more complete team.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the executives have something to do with that. I mean, we've seen it with the Knicks, whether they're just trying to try and get as many big players as they can. I mean, they're just trying to give money out just so they could be successful near term, which is not a successful strategy. I mean, you see these big teams fall apart because they're unsustainable. But then you see GMs and teams like the Oklahoma City that seem like they're building for long-term future success. And it'll be interesting to find out what the next executives are going to do in this situation, because it seems like they have the option, if they want to get Harden. But would you sacrifice the future of your franchise for at least 6 years just for James Harden?
Yeah, I mean, I like Brooklyn's roster a lot. I think with the moves that Milwaukee just made today and yesterday, I think Milwaukee and the Nets have the two best rosters in the East. You know, I think Karis LeVert is a all-star level player. Whether him or Dinwiddie comes off the bench, however that ends up going, you know, I think they have, you know, the firepower type in terms of scoring offense. They have players, Durant, Dinwiddie, LeVert, that can guard multiple positions, which is important in the NBA with, you know, everything being an ISO or off a screen, and switching. So, and I think, you know, if you take LeBron out of the equation in the NBA, every other successful team has kind of been more organically grown. You know, you look at Golden State, obviously they acquired Kevin Durant, but besides that, they were all in-house. Draymond Green, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson. Look at Miami, obviously they added Jimmy Butler, but they have a core of players that, you know, were developed in their system. Look at Denver, look at, you know, teams on the top half of the Western and Eastern Conference, and they're teams that are really, you know, built from the inside out. And, you know, I don't know if, you know, just acquiring big names and making big threes, random big threes is always the answer. You know, if you have, you know, a top 5 player, yeah, of course you're going to be a contender if you add Anthony Davis to any team, if you add Kevin Durant to any team, Steph Curry, LeBron, whatever it may be. But you know, there's only probably 4 or 5 players in the league that if you put them on a team, they're an automatic contender. Every other team, you know, is kind of built from the inside out, in my opinion.
Yeah, and just to tap into that real quick with what you talked about with the Bucks. For those of you who don't know, the Milwaukee Bucks acquired Drew Holiday and a second-round pick from the New Orleans Pelicans, who sent over a king's ransom for him in Eric Bledsoe, George Hill, 3 guaranteed first-round picks, and 2 pick swaps, which, I mean, I know they're trying to keep Giannis, but what's the risk if Giannis still leaves? I mean, I still don't think that's a championship team. I still think it has its flaws. And my problem with that is now you're giving away your future. And if Giannis leaves, I mean, you're putting yourself middle to bottom of the East, which is not going to be good. And they're not going to have any young players coming up through their system with all the draft picks they just sent out.
I think that one's kind of funny because a lot of the heat that they were getting during the playoffs was because their bench was getting too many minutes, and, you know, coach was resting, but Budenholzer was resting Giannis too much or resting Chris Middleton too much, and now that's not really a problem because they literally just have 5 players on their roster. So I feel like maybe that was the plan.
I think I think if you have a top 5 player and Giannis is arguably, a top 3 or best player in the NBA, I think you have to do whatever it takes, especially in a situation with Milwaukee. They're not going to sign any top 5 free agents, so I think you kind of have to do whatever it takes to satisfy that player the best you can. And Giannis, I think he came out and said that he's open to staying, but it depends on what they do, the moves they make, and Holiday, and then I think they got Bogdanovich or
they did a sign and trade with Sacramento for Bogdan Bogdanovich,
right,
the younger one, not the
so
not the older one.
Adding them to Middleton, a lineup with obviously Giannis, Middleton, and Lopez, I think personally between them and Brooklyn, those are the two best starting lineups in the East. So
yeah, I agree. I'm glad you touched on that, Matt. They've kind of laid it all out on a plate for Giannis, and I'd love to know what you'll think about this. Do you think if they don't get closer to an NBA title, if not win an NBA title, Giannis will leave? Do you think he'll only stay if they win?
I think so.
Yeah, and that's a dangerous move.
Because do players want to play with Giannis? I'm sure they do. He seems like an ideal type of player to be with, being that he doesn't need the ball all the time. He can impact the game in other ways, and things like that. But Milwaukee is a tough sell for guys regardless of that situation when there's so many bigger markets in other cities you can go to, and clearly top 5, top 10 players, Milwaukee's not signing any of those guys in free agency. They're never going to get a player of Giannis's caliber unless they do what they did with Giannis, draft him and develop him. So, I think you have to go all out in terms of trying to keep him there, and adding players and whatever you need to do. But yeah, especially after seeing Anthony Davis leave, a small market, a team that didn't really surround him with much. I think Milwaukee's been more active than New Orleans was when they had Davis, but seeing Davis go right to LA, I mean, granted, he was with the best player in the history of basketball, in my opinion, in LeBron, but if he can leave and go to a contender right away, Giannis sees that.
Yeah, and I think the Pelicans, you mentioned Anthony Davis, they've been extremely savvy with their trades. I mean, they've received a lot for AD, Drew Holiday, and I think now they're in an excellent position for the next probably 5 years, maybe longer. I mean, they've set up an excellent platform, and now they have a strong team. So
yeah, them in Oklahoma City are just acquiring draft picks and looking to put themselves in situations, because again, New Orleans and Oklahoma City aren't markets that are going to attract anyone. So
yeah.
And that was a big trade that we need to touch on, was the Oklahoma City Thunder sending Chris Paul to the Phoenix Suns, finally getting Devin Booker, a backcourt running mate that can finally lead the team and give them some leadership, rather than just having Devin Booker have to do everything. So I think that's a big trade. But now you see OKC, they have 15 guaranteed first-round picks from 2021 to 2026, plus 4 swaps. So you're thinking 20 first-round picks over 5 years. I mean, that's a whole team. They can do whatever they want, package whatever they want to surround Shai Gilgeous-Alexander with whatever kind of team they want. And they're not even close to being done in the trade market. It sounds like Steven Adams is going to be on the move soon. To where he goes, I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah, it's interesting looking at OKC. Not only can they can fill a whole roster just for their NBA, but they can also fill basically an entire G League team with just picks over the next 4 years. And you saw what they did when they built their first big core with Harden, Westbrook, and Durant. Obviously, people in OKC have a pretty good scouting have a pretty good idea on how to scout players and how to bring in good players. And, that's dangerous. We saw the Celtics, who also have a good front office, doing a similar thing. Their young core has been increasing, their ceiling, and they look like they're pretty close to reaching the finals as well. So, there's something to be said about these teams that just have strong front offices that are able to just rebuild and rebuild quickly too, because the NBA players coming out of college aren't that far off from being superstars. And it probably won't be long until we see OKC again, like competing.
Yeah, and that's gonna be something that's interesting. I'm gonna touch on a few more trades that have happened over the past couple of days. So we had Robert Covington heading to the Trailblazers, which makes me think more of the Rockets heading toward a total rebuild. With getting someone that they really wanted in Robert Covington last year, it's weird to see them ship him off just after half a season pretty much. We also had the Nets acquired Bruce Brown from the Pistons. That's kind of a low-end trade. No one's making much out of that. And then Dennis Schroeder gets traded to the Lakers for Danny Green and this year's 28th overall draft pick. That'll be finalized on draft night because they can't give that pick over quite yet. Something that just came through Twitter is it sounds like Houston and Washington have entered talks for John Wall for Russell Westbrook.
Interesting.
I don't know what you guys think about that. I don't understand that one at all.
I think if that trade happens, Bradley Beal's gone the next season, because I think he's a free agent after this season. So I feel like Bradley Beal's gone.
He signed a 5-year extension last year. He's there long term.
Oh, he is sticking around.
Yeah, I mean, unless he gets traded, which I will touch on one more thing before we get to Matt on his opinion on this. Chad Ochocinco was talking with Jimmy Butler, and he said, "Are we doing anything this year in the trade?" And Jimmy Butler just said, "Sit tight and be ready." So I think you might see something where Miami sends a package to Washington for Bradley Beal.
Just a brief comment on the potential Russell Westbrook John Wall trade. I mean, it doesn't seem logical, does it? After you think about they've almost accepted James Harden was going to go, and then they, as you said, they moved Covington on quite quickly after pursuing him and getting him finally on the team. It seems like it doesn't make sense to add someone like John Wall if you're trying to tank someone of that caliber.
I don't know if John Wall by himself with a subpar roster around him is going to make much noise in the West. So
yeah.
I think that if they do end up trading James Harden, I wouldn't be surprised if Houston goes into rebuild mode for these next few years.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to watch. That's for sure.
Yeah, one more team that we really have to touch on is, and one that I didn't understand quite completely, is the Boston Celtics are trying to get rid of Gordon Hayward, which I understand them trying to move off of his contract. He's getting $34 million a year. That's a lot of money. And now they're trying to trade Kemba Walker, which I thought Kemba didn't have his best season last year. I think he had some injuries that were hampering him. But I don't understand them trying to move off of him and who they would really get in return that would be better than Kemba.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I'm not sure either.
Yeah, I think that's a strange one. It seemed like Kemba had his little settling in period, and he was going to. I think he probably would start the season in excellent form. I think he's built the relationships. It seems like the dynamic is working over there. Why you would split that up, it's a question mark that needs to be answered. Whether it's personal reasons, which is a potential, but it didn't seem like he had any issues. But yeah, I mean, it's a strange one, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're definitely going to see some kind of trade for a big man to Boston, whether that's them trading for Andre Drummond, who's on his 1-year contract with Cleveland. He just opted into his contract for $28 million. So I think that one almost lines up perfectly. Or doing something with the Indiana Pacers and getting Miles Turner, which I think that definitely would make Indiana better, opening up Domantas Sabonis to have more of a bigger role as the big man de facto on that team. But definitely there's going to be a lot more moves during this really short NBA offseason that is just so far has been absolutely wild.
Yeah, and I actually have a question for all three of you guys about this offseason. Do you think there's going to be a lot of knee-jerk trades and, like, you know, maybe not thought out as well because it's such a quick offseason and decisions have to be made quickly?
I think what you're seeing at the moment is you're almost seeing how the executives are combining and moving players. You can see there's certain teams that I feel personally that are a lot more collected and really genuinely putting great thought into these trades and getting exactly what they want. I mean, you see the Pelicans, OKC, some of these teams are having fantastic. I mean, it's been one day that they're already putting themselves in fantastic position. And then you have other teams kind of pushing kind of strange gambles. And I don't know if that's desperation, that they feel like they can't attract, as Matt was saying and Ben was saying, that they can't attract these big players, so they're trying to make a big move so they can draw some attention to themselves. I mean, I'm not sure. I don't know. How do you feel about that?
I think it may go that way, or it may die down, and then once the trade deadline comes up in the middle of the season and teams kind of see where they're at after, you know, this shortened off season plays out, and then the draft and whatnot, potentially pick back up mid-season as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think the teams that have made the moves so far, I think Milwaukee making the moves out of desperation. I mean, that is them making their last-ditch effort at keeping Giannis in Milwaukee. Other teams, though, I think the Suns have been thinking this one out for a while. I think they saw the writing on the wall, and they even had Fred VanVleet as a backup that they were going to go after if they weren't able to land Chris Paul. So I think you are seeing, like we were mentioning earlier about these really good front offices, if they're making a move, they're doing it quite deliberately, and they're moving like a surgeon rather than some of these teams that are just going around frantically. I think a lot of these teams are going to kind of just stay put and wait till the middle of the season deadline. And especially, I think that's going to give them some more time to see how things are working out. And I think teams are going to be easier to move off of players this year, especially since we're shortening the season a little bit to 72 games.
Yeah, I think a franchise we've yet to see and we potentially will see, maybe the Charlotte Hornets. I think they may pull a desperation trade. Who that's for would be interesting to find out. They have a 3rd overall pick in the draft. Whether they'll use that as part of the trade, I doubt it. I think they'll sit in there and take a good player to build the franchise around. But I think they need someone else in there to try and rejuvenate that team 100%. I think they're going to move in this off season.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to see some of these teams. I think Michael Jordan is kind of desperate for the Hornets to get good. He hasn't had a great reputation as an owner so far, And I think he's going to put pressure on his front office to get someone in there that, at least is going to drive ticket prices. And I think that's another thing with the Knicks that they're going to try and do. They've been in talks of trying to get Russell Westbrook. And if I was the Knicks, I would just hold still for now. You're going to have a top 10. You have a top 10 pick in this draft. Find someone who fits the system and stop signing all these power forwards.
Oh yeah.
I literally just watched a video before this podcast of the lowest IQ basketball player ever, and that's Julius Randle. So I think the Knicks just have to sit still for a little bit, stop signing these guys that really aren't worth $20 million, and try and build some stuff. I don't mind if they move off of Frank Ntilikina or Kevin Knox, but don't get rid of Mitchell Robinson and don't get rid of RJ Barrett. I think they have to stay still on that.
Yeah, I think New York's struggling at the moment in all sports. I mean, the Yankees are really pulling that city. They're struggling across the board with the Jets, the Giants, the Mets. I mean, they're just in one big mess. I think we need the executives to sit down with the Pelicans and OKC and try and rebuild that, how they think about what they're doing, because it seems like, as you said, they're just making panic signings.
You know what I think? Maybe it's time for Theo Epstein to switch sports.
Yeah,
right?
Maybe move some baseball. That's what it was.
Maybe he just wants a new challenge, like a really new challenge, and he's just like, I'll figure out basketball, I guess.
I mean, he broke the Cubs' 108-year drought for a championship, so maybe he can do something with the Knicks.
Yeah.
All right, Matt, I got one more question before we'll let you go. The Sixers are projected to draft Cole Anthony at number 21 in the draft tomorrow night. Do you like that pick?
Quick reaction, yeah. I don't know much about Cole Anthony's game. He seems like he can shoot. More of a true point guard type of guy. I think he was hurt for a lot of the year at Carolina. But quick reaction, yeah.
Yeah, I think this draft is going to be pretty guard dominant. You're going to see a lot of Tyrese Halliburton is going to be in this draft. Obviously, you have the LaMelo Ball. You have the guard forward of Anthony Edwards. I think the only true big man that you're going to see that's probably going to make an impact this year is James Wiseman. So, Matt, we want to thank you so much for coming on here today. That was some great insight from your career and your time down in Brazil. And let's hope that we can have you come on here again and talk some more basketball with us.
Always down, guys. Appreciate you guys. Congrats on getting started. Best of luck. Hopefully I wasn't boring, but appreciate you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Matt.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
All right, we'll see you, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
All right, guys. I think that's a wrap for today. I'm pretty happy with how that went.
All right, see ya.
Yeah. Sorry. I want to thank everyone that came in and watched this today. Tolly and I are going to be dropping a late night draft review tomorrow night. Just our quick reactions. So we'll post a little something tomorrow night. Leave in the comments anything that you would like us to cover, except for hockey. This is non-negotiable. No hockey whatsoever. But make sure to follow our social medias. All of them are under All Sports BPT. You can find us on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram. So give us a follow. And make sure that you're liking this video and subscribing to see everything that we have going forward.
Thank you. Until next time.
Yeah, thanks for listening, and we'll be around.
Oh, I just want to make a note to the fans, just in case you're just looking back and we're 200 episodes in, 3 years down the line. I still have hair, just to put that out there, just because I know in 3 years it's not going to be there. So
that might be all of us after COVID's done.
Yeah, that's true.
But thank you all for watching, and until next time, guys, we'll see you later.
See ya.